Officer Adam leaned back against his patrol car, his eyes scanning the quiet neighborhood streets. He had been assigned to this area for years, and the routine had become as familiar to him as the deep lines etched into his weathered face. The job had changed him, hardened him like steel forged in fire. He had witnessed too much and felt too little. As he turned onto Main Street, something caught his attention. A small figure huddled near the entrance of Joe's diner. It was a little girl, no older than 4 or 5, her clothes dirty, her hair tangled. She looked tired, hungry, and far too young to be alone. Adam's brow furrowed. He had seen this before. Desperate children, hungry enough to steal when no one was looking. The girl's wide eyes were fixed on the diner, her gaze alert and searching. It was a look Adam knew all too well. He pulled his car out of sight, parking it quietly before stepping out with a heavy sigh. His boots made a soft thud against the pavement as he moved cautiously, not wanting to startle her. He kept his distance, observing from the corner. Her small fists were clenched tightly at her sides, her body tense as if ready to bolt at any moment. For the first time in a long while, Adam felt something stir inside him, an emotion he barely recognized. It was concern, maybe even a flicker of compassion. He shook his head, trying to push the feeling aside. He had a job to do, and if this child was about to steal something, he needed to stop her before she got into trouble. But as he watched her, he couldn't help but wonder what had brought her here, alone and hungry. His instincts kicked in. He decided to follow her, staying hidden in the shadows, his eyes never leaving her fragile figure. The girl eventually moved away from the diner, darting into the busy street. Adam's eyes narrowed as he tracked her every move. She weaved through the crowd with surprising agility, her head constantly turning, checking to see if anyone was following her. His suspicions deepened. This wasn't normal behavior for a child her age. He had seen enough in his years as a cop to know when something was off. Was she a runaway? Or perhaps involved in some petty crime? Adam stepped out from his hiding spot, trailing her at a careful distance. The bustling street was alive with the usual afternoon commotion, but his focus never wavered from the little girl. She moved with purpose, clearly knowing where she was headed. As she slipped between shoppers and businessmen, Adam felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling he got when something didn't sit right. He had learned to trust that instinct over the years. The girl's clothes were clean, yet she wandered alone. He quickened his pace, careful not to lose sight of her. His mind raced through the procedures he'd need to follow if she was a runaway, missing persons reports to check, or worse if she was caught up in something illegal. His hand instinctively reached for his radio, but he hesitated. Something told him there was more to this story, and he wanted to figure it out on his own first. As Adam followed her, a wave of sadness washed over him. No child should be out here alone, looking so lost and afraid. Despite years of seeing the worst in people, a part of him still ached when he saw children caught in bad situations. His eyes narrowed again as the girl picked up her pace, his police instincts kicking into high gear. His heart raced with the familiar surge of adrenaline. Something was definitely wrong here, and he was determined to get to the bottom of it. Keeping a safe distance, Adam followed the girl as she ducked into a narrow alley. The bustling sounds of the main street faded, replaced by the eerie echo of their footsteps bouncing off the brick walls. He moved cautiously, his hand hovering near his hip, ready to reach for his gun if necessary. The alley twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the city's unsavory parts. Adam's mind raced with possibilities. Was she meeting someone? Running from something? His years on the force had taught him to expect the unexpected, and he braced himself for whatever might come next. As they ventured further into the maze of side streets, Adam's senses sharpened. Every shadow seemed to hold a potential threat, every sound a possible danger. He watched as the girl glanced over her shoulder, her eyes wide with what looked like fear. For a brief moment, their gazes met, and Adam saw a flash of panic cross her face before she darted around another corner. His heart pounded in his chest as he quickened his pace, not wanting to lose her. The chase was on now, but this wasn't like pursuing a suspect. This was a child, and something in her eyes told him she wasn't the culprit here. She was running from something. As he rounded the corner, Adam's hand instinctively moved to his radio again. He should call for backup, but what would he say? He had no solid evidence of wrongdoing, just a gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. The alley seemed to close in around them, the air thick with tension. Adam's breaths came in short, controlled bursts as he prepared for whatever lay ahead. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he was determined to see it through. Whatever trouble this girl was in, he was going to get to the bottom of it. His pulse raced as he watched her slip into a dark alley and disappear into an old, abandoned building. Adam stopped at the entrance, his sharp eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. The street was eerily silent, the distant hum of traffic the only sound breaking the stillness. The building loomed before him, its windows boarded up, its walls covered in graffiti. Adam's mind raced with possibilities, each more troubling than the last. Was this a drug den? A hideout for runaways? His years on the force had shown him the worst of what these abandoned places could become. Whatever lay inside, Adam knew he had to find out, and protect the girl before it was too late. Officer Adam stood still, his breath catching in his throat as he grasped the familiar weight of his flashlight. The beam sliced through the oppressive darkness like a blade, guiding his steps toward the building's crooked entrance. The door, hanging on rusted hinges, groaned ominously as a gust of wind swept through the alley. His free hand instinctively moved to his holster, fingers twitching, ready to draw his weapon if necessary. Logic told him to call for backup, but something deep inside stopped him. This felt personal now. He needed to see this through himself. As Adam stepped inside, the stench of mold and decay hit him like a brick wall. The light from his flashlight flickered over peeling wallpaper and broken furniture, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Every creak of the floor beneath him, every shadow in the corner, heightened his alertness. "Kid," he called softly, his voice echoing in the empty, crumbling space. No response. But then, from deeper inside, he heard a faint shuffling sound. Adam's steps were cautious, measured as he moved toward the noise. His body was tense, prepared for confrontation, yet his gut told him this was more than what it seemed. The cold air inside sent a shiver down his spine, the kind that came not from the temperature but from years of knowing when things were about to go sideways. He swept the room with his light, revealing collapsed walls and debris scattered across the floor. A soft noise caught his attention, distant but distinct. A muffled whisper followed by a faint cry. He gripped his flashlight tighter and moved toward the sound, his heart thudding louder in his chest with each step. As he approached the corner of the building, his hand hovered near his holster again. His mind raced with possibilities. Was the little girl in danger, or was she the danger herself? The corner loomed ahead, bathed in shadow. Adam paused, inhaling deeply, trying to steady his nerves. He knew whatever he found around that corner could change everything. His heartbeat quickened, the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The flashlight beam wavered, cutting into the darkness ahead of him, and what it revealed made Adam freeze in his tracks. There, huddled against the wall, was the little girl, Lucy. But she wasn't alone. In her frail arms, she cradled a baby, its faint cries echoing in the desolate space. The sight was so unexpected that Adam's mind went blank for a moment. He blinked hard, trying to comprehend the scene before him. Lucy looked up at him, her wide eyes filled with a mix of fear and exhaustion. Dirt streaked her tear-stained face, and her small body trembled as she rocked the baby gently back and forth. "It's okay," she whispered to the infant, her voice barely audible. "Sure, it's okay." Adam lowered his flashlight, suddenly aware of how imposing he must look to her. His mind raced, piecing together the reality that this was nothing like what he had expected. The baby's cries were weak, more like soft whimpers, and Adam's trained eye immediately noticed that the infant looked pale, underweight. His heart clenched at the sight. Lucy, too, looked on the brink of collapse, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion, her clothes hanging loosely from her small frame. For a long moment, Adam just stood there, speechless. All the years on the force had never prepared him for this. The hardened, cynical shell he had built up over time began to crack in the face of these two vulnerable children. Adam started, his voice faltering. He didn't know what to say, didn't know how to bridge the gap between his suspicions and the heartbreaking truth before him. Slowly, he holstered his gun, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Are you two all right?" he asked, his voice soft, almost pleading. Lucy didn't answer. She only stared at him, her body tense, as if ready to protect her brother at any cost. The fear in her eyes hit Adam like a punch to the gut, reminding him of all the times he had seen that same look in the eyes of victims over the years. His throat tightened, his vision blurring as he blinked back tears he hadn't even realized were forming. He tried to stop them, but they flowed anyway, hot and unstoppable. Years of pent-up emotion seemed to break free, flooding past the dam he had built around his heart. "Oh God," he choked out, his voice barely a whisper. The tough, jaded cop facade he had worn for so long was crumbling, leaving him raw, exposed. He felt foolish for his earlier suspicions, ashamed of how quickly he had jumped to harsh conclusions about this little girl. Lucy wasn't a criminal. She was just a child, one who had been trying to protect her baby brother from a world that had already been far too cruel to them. Adam took a deep breath, steadying himself. He knew he had to pull it together and be strong for these kids who clearly needed help. Wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, he approached Lucy slowly, careful not to scare her. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice still heavy with emotion. He crouched down a few feet from her, trying to appear less intimidating. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. Can you tell me what's going on?" His voice cracked as he spoke, betraying the storm of emotions swirling inside him. He felt a mix of worry, guilt, and an overwhelming need to help. Lucy looked up at him, exhausted, still holding her brother close. Adam could see the fear in her eyes, but there was something else, maybe a flicker of hope. "It's okay," he reassured her gently, his voice calm. "I'm here to help. You're not in trouble. I just want to make sure you and your brother are safe." He waited patiently, giving Lucy the time she needed to process his words. His heart ached watching her, a child forced to carry such a heavy burden. Adam silently vowed to do whatever it took to help them, feeling a sense of protection he hadn't experienced in years. As Lucy began to speak, her voice trembled. "We've been here since yesterday," she whispered, rocking the baby gently. "Mom said she'd be right back. She went to get us some food, but—" Her voice trailed off and she blinked back tears. A wave of compassion surged through Adam. He wanted nothing more than to reach out and comfort her, but he held back, not wanting to frighten her. "Can you tell me more?" he asked softly, his voice full of genuine concern. Lucy took a deep breath. "We had to run away," she said, her young face etched with worry far beyond her years. "Dad, he was always so angry. He'd drink and then he'd yell and throw things." Adam's jaw tightened at the thought of what these children had endured. He'd seen too many cases like this in his years on the force, but it never got easier. "Mom said we had to leave," Lucy continued, her voice barely a whisper. "She woke us up in the middle of the night. We didn't grab clothes or toys. We just ran." She looked at Adam, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mom promised she'd be right back. She said she was just getting us some food, but it's been so long, and I'm scared." Adam felt his own eyes sting with tears again. He blinked hard, trying to stay strong for Lucy and her brother. The baby whimpered softly, and Lucy instinctively held him closer. "You've been so brave," Adam said, his voice thick with emotion. "Both of you. I can't imagine how scary this must be." Lucy nodded, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "I just want Mom to come back," she whispered. "I don't know what to do. The baby's hungry and I'm afraid someone will find us here." Adam's heart broke for these two innocent children, trapped in such a terrible situation. He knew he had to protect them, but first he needed to earn Lucy's trust. Every word she spoke felt like a punch to his gut, her bravery in the face of such hardship leaving him deeply moved. As she told him about fleeing an abusive home, a protective instinct surged inside him. Suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind. Just yesterday he'd heard about a car accident involving an unidentified woman. The details were vague, but something about Lucy's story made his instincts buzz. "Lucy," he said gently, trying not to alarm her, "can you tell me what your mom looks like?" Lucy's eyes widened slightly. "She has long brown hair," she said, her voice trembling, "and green eyes like mine. She was wearing her favorite blue sweater when she left." Adam's heart skipped a beat. The description matched what he remembered from the accident report. He tried to keep his expression neutral, not wanting to worry Lucy further. "And when did she leave?" he asked, his voice soft but urgent. Lucy frowned, thinking hard. "It was late afternoon," she said. Adam's suspicion deepened. The timing lined up perfectly with the accident. A knot formed in his stomach as he realized the gravity of the situation these children might be facing. He watched as Lucy cradled her baby brother, her small body curled protectively around him. The sight stirred something deep within Adam, breaking down the walls he had built around his heart during his years on the force. "Lucy," he said, his voice warm with compassion, "you've done an incredible job taking care of your brother. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. I'm here to help you both." Lucy looked at him, hope and fear battling in her eyes. "Really?" she whispered, as if afraid to believe it. Adam nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "Really?" he promised. "I'll do everything I can to find out what happened to your mom and keep both of you safe." A wave of determination swept over Adam as he gazed at Lucy and her brother. He knew he had to help them no matter what. "Lucy," he said softly, kneeling down to her level, "I promise we'll figure this out together. You're not alone anymore." Lucy's eyes widened, a mixture of hope and uncertainty flickering across her face. Adam's heart clenched at the trust he saw there. "Can I hold your brother for a bit?" he asked gently. "You've been so brave taking care of him. Let me help you now." Lucy hesitated for a moment, then carefully passed the baby to Adam. The little boy, who had been restless before, settled quietly in Adam's arms. "There we go, little guy," Adam murmured, cradling the baby with care. He turned to Lucy. "Let's get you both out of here and someplace safe, okay?" Lucy nodded, her small hand reaching out to grip Adam's uniform as they stepped out of the abandoned building. As they emerged into the sunlight, Adam felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He looked down at Lucy, her face etched with both worry and relief, and he felt ashamed of his earlier suspicions. "Lucy," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you an apology. When I first saw you, I thought you might be up to something bad. I was so wrong and I'm sorry." Lucy looked at him, her wise green eyes far beyond her years. "You're helping us now," she said softly. Adam swallowed hard, deeply moved by her forgiveness. As Officer Adam and Lucy made their way to his patrol car, Adam couldn't shake the feeling of how close he had come to failing those children, how near he had been to losing everything that mattered in that moment. These kids were desperate, clinging to hope in a world that had already failed them so many times. "Let's get you both to a doctor," Adam said softly, carefully placing the baby in the back seat. "Then we'll figure out what happened to your mom. I promise you, Lucy, I'll do everything I can to help you and your brother." As Adam drove towards the station, his mind raced, filled with thoughts of Lucy and her little brother. He glanced in the rearview mirror, watching Lucy tenderly comfort her sleeping sibling. His heart ached for them. These kids had already been through so much. When they arrived at the station parking lot, Adam took a deep breath, bracing himself. His colleagues would be shocked to see him so personally involved. After all, he was known as the tough, no-nonsense cop, the one who rarely let his emotions show. "We're here, Lucy," he said softly. "Let's get your brother some help, okay?" Lucy nodded, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. Adam gently lifted the baby from the car seat, holding him close to his chest, and with his free hand he guided Lucy inside the station. Heads turned the moment they stepped through the door. Officer Johnson, a longtime colleague, approached with a puzzled expression. "Adam, what's going on?" Johnson asked, glancing at the children. Adam's voice was steady but firm. "These kids need our help. I need medical attention for the baby immediately." Johnson's eyebrows shot up in surprise. It was unusual to see Adam so visibly concerned. "Of course. I'll call the paramedics," Johnson said, his tone softer now. As Johnson made the call, Adam led Lucy to his desk. He could feel the curious gazes of his fellow officers, but he ignored them. Right now, these kids were his priority. "Lucy, can you sit here for a moment?" Adam asked gently. "I need to speak with my boss, but I'll be right back." Lucy nodded again, her small hand still clutching Adam's uniform. He gave her a reassuring smile before heading to Captain Reeves' office. The captain looked up as Adam entered. "Officer Adam, what's this I hear about you bringing in kids?" Reeves asked. Adam took a deep breath. "Sir, I found these kids in an abandoned building. The baby needs medical attention, and I think their mother might be the woman from the car accident last night." Reeves leaned back in his chair, studying Adam's face. "You want to handle this case personally, don't you?" "Yes, sir," Adam replied without hesitation. "I know it's not my usual beat, but these kids need help. I want to see it through." The captain nodded slowly. "All right, Adam. It's your case. But I have to say, I've never seen you like this before." Adam swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his promise. "Neither have I, sir. But I made a promise to help these kids and I intend to keep it." As he walked back to his desk, Adam saw the paramedics arrive. Lucy looked up at him, fear evident in her eyes. "It's okay, Lucy," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "These people are here to help your brother. I'll be right here with you." Officer Adam picked up the phone, his hands trembling. He dialed the number for the local hospital, his heart pounding as he waited for someone to answer. He glanced at Lucy, who was watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Memorial Hospital, how can I help you?" a voice answered. "This is Officer Adam from the police department," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm calling about a woman who was brought in after a car accident last night." The nurse on the other end paused. "Yes, we have an unidentified woman in critical condition. Do you have any information about her?" Adam took a deep breath. "I think I do. Can you describe her?" As the nurse provided details about the woman's appearance, Adam's suspicions grew stronger. He looked over at Lucy, his heart heavy. "Lucy," he said gently, "can you tell me what your mom looks like?" Lucy's voice was quiet as she described her mother, the necklace she always wore, her hair, her height, the small scar on her left hand. With every detail, Adam's certainty grew, along with a mixture of relief and dread. Turning back to the phone, Adam said, "I think we've identified her. She's the mother of 2 children I have here." The nurse's voice softened. "I see. Well, she's still in critical condition, but now that we know who she is, we can contact her family." Adam thanked the nurse and hung up. He sat there for a moment trying to process the news. Lucy's mother was alive, but just barely. Relief washed over him, knowing she hadn't abandoned her children, but horror quickly followed as he thought of what could still happen. He turned to Lucy, knowing he had to tell her the truth. "Lucy," he said softly, kneeling down to her level, "I have some news about your mom." Officer Adam took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the weight of the news he had to deliver. He looked into Lucy's eyes, seeing a mix of fear and hope that made his chest tighten. "Lucy," he said gently, "we found your mom. She's at the hospital." Lucy's eyes widened, a flicker of hope lighting up her face. "Is she okay? Can we see her?" Adam struggled to find the right words. "She's hurt, sweetheart. Really bad. But the doctors are taking good care of her. She's very sick right now." Lucy's bottom lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and asked, "But she'll get better soon, right?" Adam felt a lump rise in his throat. This little girl had been through so much, and yet here she was, still holding on to hope. He marveled at her strength. "The doctors are doing everything they can," he said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Your mom is fighting hard, just like you've been fighting to take care of your brother." Lucy nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "She has to get better. She promised she'd come back." Adam felt his own eyes sting with tears. He couldn't bear the thought of this brave little girl losing her mother after everything she'd been through. Without thinking, he pulled Lucy into a gentle hug. "Listen to me, Lucy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mom is going to be okay. I promise you, we'll do everything we can to help her get better." As Lucy clung to him, Adam realized just how much this child had endured. She had escaped an abusive home, cared for her baby brother on her own, and now faced the possibility of losing her mother. Yet here she stood waiting, hoping. Later, standing in the hospital corridor, Adam's heart pounded as he took a deep breath and opened the door to Lucy's mother's room. The sight that greeted him made his stomach churn. Lucy's mother lay motionless in the bed, her face pale and bruised, tubes and wires connecting her to various machines that beeped and whirred, keeping her alive. Officer Adam had seen many accident victims in his years on the force, but this time felt different. It was personal. He approached the hospital bed cautiously, taking in the features of the woman lying there. Despite her bruised and battered state, he could see Lucy in her face, the same determined set of the jaw, the gentle curve of her cheeks. A tightness gripped Adam's throat, emotion welling up inside him. Just then, a doctor entered, clipboard in hand. "Officer," she said softly, "I'm Dr. Chin. I've been overseeing Ms. Willow's care." Adam nodded, unable to tear his gaze away from Lucy's mother. "How is she?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Dr. Chen's expression turned grave. "I won't sugarcoat it, officer. Her condition is critical. The accident caused severe head trauma and internal injuries. We're doing everything we can, but—" She paused, her tone softening. "Her recovery is uncertain at this point." The words hit Adam like a blow to the stomach. He thought of Lucy and her baby brother waiting at the station. They had already been through so much. The thought of them losing their mother after everything else was almost unbearable. What are her chances? Adam's voice was hoarse, nearly a whisper. Dr. Chin shook her head slightly. "It's too early to say for sure. The next 48 hours will be critical." As Adam listened to the doctor explain the treatments and procedures, a heavy sense of responsibility settled over him. Lucy and her brother needed someone to care for them, to protect them while their mother fought for her life. Leaving the hospital, Adam's heart felt heavy, his mind racing with thoughts of Lucy and her brother. He couldn't shake the image of their mother, lying motionless in that hospital bed. As he drove back to the station, he knew he had to act quickly to ensure the safety and well-being of the children. When Adam arrived at the station, he found Lucy curled up in a chair, her brother nestled in her arms. The sight tugged at his heartstrings. He approached them slowly, kneeling to meet Lucy's eyes. "Hey," he said gently, "how are you two holding up?" Lucy looked at him, her eyes filled with worry. "Is Mommy okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Adam swallowed hard. "Your mom's very sick, Lucy. The doctors are doing everything they can to help her." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But right now, we need to make sure you and your brother are taken care of." As he spoke, Adam felt a knot tightening in his stomach. The thought of separating these children from their mother, even temporarily, felt wrong. He knew the system well enough to understand that once the kids entered foster care, Reuniting them with their mother could be a long, painful process. No, he thought to himself, I can't let that happen. Adam stood, determination settling in. He walked straight to his captain's office, knocking firmly on the door. Come in, a gruff voice called out. Adam entered, his mind made up. Captain, I need to talk to you about the Willow children, he said. For the next hour, Adam pleaded his case, passionately arguing to keep Lucy and her brother together, stressing the trauma they had already endured and the importance of maintaining their connection to their mother. He proposed alternative solutions, suggested temporary arrangements, and even offered to take personal responsibility for their care. As Adam spoke, he realized just how much this case had affected him. He had always prided himself on his tough exterior, but these children had broken through his defenses. He couldn't bear the thought of failing them. Adam stood by Lucy's side when the social worker, Miss Thompson, entered the room. She was a middle-aged woman with a kind face and gentle eyes. Adam felt Lucy tense beside him, and he instinctively placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Hello, Lucy, Miss Thompson said warmly. I'm here to help you and your brother. Can we talk for a bit? Lucy nodded hesitantly, her eyes darting to Adam for reassurance. He gave her a small smile and a nod. It's okay, Lucy. I'll be right here, he said softly. As Miss Thompson began asking Lucy about her life, her family, and recent events, Adam felt a weight settle in his chest. He watched Lucy's face closely, noting every flicker of emotion that crossed it. She was trying so hard to be brave, but he could see the fear and uncertainty in her eyes. Miss Thompson's voice was gentle and her questions were kind, but Adam knew that with each answer Lucy gave, they were one step closer to an uncertain future. When Miss Thompson asked about Lucy's father, Adam saw the little girl shrink into herself. He quickly stepped in. Maybe we could take a little break. Lucy's been through a lot, he suggested. Miss Thompson nodded understandingly. Of course. Lucy, would you like some water? As Lucy took a sip, Adam felt the crushing weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew the system could be cold and impersonal, despite everyone's best intentions. He feared for Lucy and her brother, imagining them shuffled from one foster home to another, separated from each other, and their mother. The conversation resumed, and Adam listened carefully, his instincts as a police officer kicking in as he mentally noted every detail. He wanted to memorize everything about Lucy's case, determined to do whatever he could to help her. As the interview came to an end, Miss Thompson turned to Adam. Officer, can I speak with you outside for a moment? Adam nodded, giving Lucy's shoulder a gentle squeeze before following the social worker out of the room. His heart was heavy with the weight of the decisions to come, but he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't let these children down. Adam had seen countless accident victims during his years on the force, but this time felt different. This was personal. He approached the bed slowly, his eyes scanning the woman's bruised and battered features. Even in her current state, he could see Lucy's mother in her. The same determined jawline, the same gentle curve of her cheeks. Emotion tightened in Adam's throat as he stood by the bedside. Just then, a doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand. Officer, she said softly, I'm Dr. Chin. I've been overseeing Mrs. Willow's care. Adam nodded, unable to tear his gaze away from Lucy's mother. How is she? He managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Chen's face turned serious. I won't sugarcoat it. Her condition is critical. The accident caused severe head trauma and internal injuries. We're doing everything we can, but her recovery is uncertain. The doctor's words hit Adam like a punch to the gut. His mind immediately went to Lucy and her little brother, waiting at the station. They had already been through so much. Losing their mother on top of everything else was a pain Adam could hardly bear to think about. What are her chances? Adam asked, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Chin shook her head slightly. It's too early to say for sure. The next 48 hours will be crucial. As Adam listened to her explain the treatments and procedures, an overwhelming sense of responsibility settled on his shoulders. Lucy and her brother needed someone to care for them, to protect them while their mother fought for her life. Leaving the hospital, his heart heavy, Adam couldn't shake the image of their mother lying still in that hospital bed. His mind raced as he drove back to the station. He knew he had to act fast to ensure the children's safety and well-being. At the station, Adam found Lucy curled up in a chair, her little brother nestled in her arms. The sight tugged at his heartstrings. He approached them slowly, kneeling down to meet Lucy's eyes. Hey, he said gently, how are you two holding up? Lucy looked at him, her eyes filled with worry. Is my mom okay? She asked, her voice trembling. Adam swallowed hard. Your mom is very sick, Lucy. The doctors are doing everything they can to help her. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But right now, we need to make sure you and your brother are taken care of. As he spoke, a knot formed in Adam's stomach. The thought of separating these children from their mother, even temporarily, felt wrong. He knew the system well enough to understand that once children entered foster care, reuniting families could be a long and difficult process. No, he thought to himself, I can't let that happen. Adam stood, his resolve hardening, and made his way to his captain's office. Knocking firmly on the door, he entered when a gruff voice called out. Captain, I need to talk to you about the Willow kids, Adam said. For the next hour, Adam pleaded his case, passionately arguing to keep Lucy and her brother together. He emphasized the trauma they had already endured and the importance of maintaining their connection to their mother. He proposed alternative solutions, suggested temporary arrangements, and even offered to take personal responsibility for their care. As he spoke, Adam realized how deeply this case had affected him. He had always prided himself on his tough exterior, but these children had broken through his defenses. He couldn't bear the thought of failing them. Adam stood beside Lucy when the social worker, Miss Thompson, entered the room. She was a middle-aged woman with a kind face and gentle eyes. Adam felt Lucy tense beside him, and he instinctively placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Hello, Lucy, Miss Thompson said warmly. I'm here to help you and your brother. Can we talk for a bit? Lucy nodded hesitantly, her eyes darting to Adam for reassurance. He gave her a small smile and a nod. It's okay, Lucy. I'll be right here with you, he said softly. As Miss Thompson began asking Lucy questions about her life, her family, and recent events, Adam felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. He watched Lucy's face closely, noting every flicker of emotion. She was trying so hard to be brave, but he could see the fear and uncertainty in her eyes. Miss Thompson's voice was gentle and her questions were kind, but Adam knew that every answer Lucy gave was another step toward an uncertain future. When Miss Thompson asked about Lucy's father, Adam saw her shrink into herself. He quickly intervened. Maybe we could take a little break? Lucy's been through a lot. Miss Thompson nodded understandingly. Of course. Lucy, would you like some water? While Lucy took a sip, Adam felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew the system, and despite everyone's best intentions, it could be cold and impersonal. He feared for Lucy and her brother, imagining them shuffled from one foster home to another, separated from each other and their mother. The conversation resumed, and Adam listened carefully, his instincts as a police officer kicking in as he mentally noted every detail. He wanted to remember everything about Lucy's case, determined to do whatever he could to help her. As the interview ended, Miss Thompson turned to Adam. Officer, can I speak with you outside for a moment? Adam nodded, giving Lucy's shoulder a gentle squeeze before following the social worker into the hallway. Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself for what was to come next. He knew Lucy's future was at stake, and he was determined to do everything in his power to ensure she and her brother stayed together and close to their mother. The following day, Adam watched from a nearby bench as Lucy gently pushed her little brother in his stroller. The park was quiet, with only a few other families scattered around the playground. The sound of children's laughter filled the air, but Adam couldn't help but notice how subdued Lucy seemed compared to the other kids. As he sat there, his eyes never leaving the two children, a wave of emotions washed over him. It had been years since he'd felt so invested in someone's well-being. His job had hardened him, made him cynical and detached, but something about Lucy and her brother had reopened a part of his heart he thought had long since closed off. Watching Lucy care for her brother, Adam felt the walls around his heart begin to crumble. She had the same protective spirit he once had, the same love that had driven him to join the force in the first place. It was both beautiful and heartbreaking to witness. Hey Lucy, he called softly. How about we get some ice cream? For a moment, Lucy's face lit up, a glimpse of the carefree child she should have been. Can we, Officer Adam? As they walked to the ice cream stand, Adam felt a lump form in his throat. He had forgotten how good it felt to bring a little joy into someone's life, even in the smallest of ways. Sitting on the park bench, ice creams in hand, Adam watched Lucy and her brother, the weight of their situation hanging in the air. But in that moment they were just kids enjoying a sunny day at the park. A fierce protectiveness washed over Adam, along with a determination to do whatever it took to help these children. He realized that by trying to shield himself from the pain of his job, he had also shut himself off from its joys. Lucy and her brother had reignited something in him, a reminder of why he became a cop in the first place. As he sat there, Adam made a silent promise to himself and to them. He would be the protector and advocate they needed, no matter what. Sitting on the park bench, Lucy's ice cream slowly melting in her hand, Adam listened closely to her stories. Her eyes sparkled as she talked about her mother, painting a picture of a woman who was kind, loving, and brave. Mom always made sure we had enough to eat, Lucy said, her voice soft but full of love. Even when things were really bad with Dad, she found a way to make us feel safe. Adam's heart clenched at the thought of what these children had endured. He watched as Lucy carefully wiped her brother's face, cleaning the sticky mess of ice cream with a tenderness beyond her years. "She sounds like a wonderful mother," Adam said gently, encouraging Lucy to continue. Lucy nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "She used to sing to us at night even when Dad was yelling." Her voice made everything seem okay. As Lucy shared more stories, Adam hung on her every word. He learned about her mother's favorite flowers, how she loved to dance in the kitchen while cooking, and how she always found time to read bedtime stories, no matter how tired she was. But not all of Lucy's stories were happy. She spoke of nights filled with fear, of hiding in closets with her little brother while their father raged. Adam felt a surge of anger toward the man who had caused this family so much pain, and an overwhelming desire to protect these children from any future harm. "You know, Lucy," Adam said, his voice thick with emotion, "you're one of the bravest people I've ever met." Lucy looked up at him, her wide eyes filled with surprise. "Really?" Adam nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Really? You've been through so much, but you're still here taking care of your brother even when it's hard. That's real courage." As Adam spoke those words, he realized just how deeply he had come to care for these children. What had started as a routine patrol had evolved into something far more personal, something that was changing him at his core. A fierce sense of protection had emerged, a need to ensure their safety and happiness that went beyond his duty as an officer. Officer Adams stood in the hospital hallway, his heart pounding as he approached Lucy's mother's room. The sterile scent of disinfectant filled the air, a stark reminder of the seriousness of the situation. He paused at the door, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. The rhythmic beeping of machines greeted him as his eyes fell upon Lucy's mother, lying motionless against the stark white hospital sheets. His gaze was drawn to the tubes and wires connecting her to monitors, a sight that unsettled him, but he forced himself to take it all in, to truly see the woman who had fought so hard for her children. A doctor in a white coat entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Officer Adam?" she asked in a calm, professional tone. Adam nodded, his throat tightening. "How is she?" His voice cracked slightly. The doctor's expression softened. "There has been some improvement," she said cautiously. "Her vital signs are stabilizing and we're seeing increased brain activity." A wave of relief washed over Adam. It wasn't much, but it was something. "That's good news, right?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. The doctor nodded, but her tone remained serious. "Yes, but I want to be clear. Her condition is still critical. The road to recovery, if she fully recovers, will be long and difficult." Adam's gaze shifted back to Lucy's mother. He thought of the little girl waiting anxiously for news, her brave face hiding the fear she must be feeling. In that moment, he made a silent vow to himself and to the woman lying unconscious before him. "I'll be here," he whispered, more to himself than to the doctor. "I'll make sure Lucy and her brother are taken care of. I'll stand by them through all of this." The doctor placed a comforting hand on Adam's shoulder. "That's more than most of our patients have," she said gently. "It will mean the world to them." As Adam left the hospital, his mind raced. The glimmer of hope he felt was tempered by the harsh reality of the long road ahead. But one thing was certain, he was in this for the long haul. Lucy and her brother needed someone, and Adam was determined to be that someone, no matter what challenges awaited. As the days turned into weeks, Officer Adam found himself spending more and more time with Lucy and her little brother. What had started as routine patrols had become something transformative, something that was changing him in ways he hadn't expected. Sitting on a park bench, Adam watched Lucy gently push her brother's stroller back and forth. The little boy giggled, his chubby hands reaching out toward his sister. Adam felt warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. "You're doing great, Lucy," he called out, his voice softer than usual. She smiled at him, her face lighting up with a joy that was contagious. In that moment, Adam realized with a jolt that he was smiling too, not the professional tight-lipped smile he usually wore, but a genuine smile that reached his eyes. When was the last time he'd smiled like that? As Lucy walked back toward him, pushing the stroller, Adam felt a lump form in his throat. These kids were no longer just a case. They had become part of his life, finding a way past his defenses and into his heart. He thought about how he used to see the world, always guarded, always distrustful. But Lucy's bravery, her unwavering love for her brother, had shown him that there was still goodness in the world, a lesson he had forgotten after years of seeing the worst in people. As Officer Adam knelt down to play with Lucy and her brother, he gently held her hand, silently vowing to be worthy of her trust. For the first time in years, Officer Adam felt like he was truly making a difference, not just enforcing the law but changing lives, including his own. Standing outside the hospital room, Adam's heart raced with a mix of hope and caution. The doctor had just informed him that Lucy's mother was showing signs of improvement and regaining consciousness. He took a deep breath, bracing himself for what was to come. As he entered the room, Adam's eyes immediately locked onto the woman in the bed. Her face, once pale and lifeless, now had a hint of color. Her eyelids fluttered and her fingers twitched slightly. It wasn't much, but it was more movement than he had seen in weeks. A surge of relief washed over him. He had been visiting Lucy's mother every day, hoping for any sign of improvement. Now, finally, there was something to hold on to. But he reminded himself not to get too excited. The road to recovery was still long. He watched as the nurse checked her vitals, scribbling notes on a clipboard. "This is a good sign," she said softly, offering Adam a small smile. He nodded, unable to find the words. As Adam left the hospital, his mind raced. He needed to tell Lucy, but he didn't want to give her false hope. The little girl had already been through so much. He decided to be honest but careful. When he arrived at the foster home where Lucy and her brother were staying, he found her playing with blocks on the floor. Her face lit up when she saw him, and Adam felt that familiar warmth fill his chest. "Lucy," he said gently, kneeling beside her, "I have some news about your mom." Her eyes widened, and she gripped a block tightly in her small hand. "Is she okay?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Adam smiled softly. "She's starting to wake up, sweetheart. The doctor said she's showing signs of improvement." Lucy's face broke into a huge grin, and she threw her arms around Adam's neck. "Really? Can we see her? When can we go home?" Adam hugged her back, feeling her tiny body tremble with excitement. He gently pulled away, looking into her hopeful eyes. "We need to be patient, Lucy. Your mom still has a long way to go, but this is a good start." Lucy nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But she's going to be okay, right? We'll be a family again?" Adam felt a lump rise in his throat. He wanted so badly to promise her that everything would be all right, but he knew better than to make promises he couldn't keep. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. "We'll do everything we can to make that happen, Lucy. I promise." As Officer Adam spent more time with Lucy and her brother, he couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of responsibility he felt for these two innocent children. Every day after his shift, he went straight to the foster home to check on them. "How are you doing today, Lucy?" he asked, kneeling to her level as he entered the living room. Lucy's face brightened when she saw him. "Officer Adam, we're okay, but I miss Mom," she said, her voice small but brave. Adam's heart tightened. "I know you do, sweetheart. We're all working hard to help her get better." He turned his attention to the baby, cooing softly in his playpen. Adam scooped him up, cradling the boy gently in his arms. "And how's this little guy doing?" he asked, feeling the weight of the future resting heavily on his shoulders. Adam had fully embraced his new role in Lucy and her brother's lives, a drastic shift from the tough officer he had once been. The transformation was a testament to how deeply this family had touched him. One evening, after ensuring the children were well fed and settled for the night, Adam headed to the hospital. His visits had become routine, and the night nurses were used to seeing him. "Any change?" he asked as he approached Mrs. Willow's room. The nurse shook her head. "No significant change, but she's stable." "That's good news." Adam nodded, entering the quiet room and pulling a chair up beside the bed. He watched the steady rise and fall of her chest. "Your kids are doing well," he said softly. "They miss you, but they're strong, just like their mom." He sat there for an hour, talking to her about Lucy and the baby, hoping his words might somehow reach her. Before leaving, he made sure the nurses had his number in case of any updates. On the way home, Adam stopped at a 24-hour grocery store, picking up snacks and baby food. As he drove, he realized how much his life had changed in just a few weeks. He had gone from being a tough cop to someone who genuinely cared for these kids and their mother. For the first time in years, he felt like he was making a real difference. A few days later, Adam found himself once again sitting beside Mrs. Willow's bed, his eyes fixed on the monitors tracking her vitals. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about her improvement, and Adam held his breath, hoping for a sign that she might wake up soon. Then he noticed her fingers twitch slightly. His heart raced as he leaned forward, gently taking her hand in his. "Mrs. Willow," he whispered, barely daring to hope. Slowly, her eyelids fluttered open. She blinked a few times, confusion clouding her gaze as she tried to take in her surroundings. When her eyes finally landed on Adam, he saw fear flash across her face. "It's okay," Adam said quickly, his voice thick with emotion. "You're safe. I'm Officer Adam. I've been looking after Lucy and the baby." At the mention of her children, Mrs. Willow's eyes widened with concern. She tried to speak, but her voice was hoarse from disuse. Adam quickly offered her some water, helping her take small sips. "Lucy, my dear Lucy," she managed to whisper, her voice filled with worry. Adam felt tears prick his eyes. "They're safe," he assured her, gently squeezing her hand. "I promise you they're being well cared for. Lucy is so strong just like you. And your little boy is doing well too." Tears welled in Mrs. Willow's eyes, and Adam found himself choking up as well. He had spent so many days talking to this unconscious woman, sharing stories about her children, and now she was finally awake. "I visit them every day," Adam continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Lucy talks about you all the time. She's been so brave taking care of her brother. You should be very proud of her." A faint smile crossed Mrs. Willow's face. "Thank you," she whispered, her grip tightening slightly around Adam's hand. Adam felt a lump form in his throat. He had never expected to feel such a deep connection to this family. When he had first seen Lucy outside that diner, he never could have imagined how intertwined their lives would become. A few days later, Adam's heart raced as he walked down the hospital corridor, guiding Lucy and her baby brother toward their mother's room. He held the baby carefully in one arm while gently leading Lucy with the other. The girl's eyes were wide with anticipation, her small hand clutching Adam's tightly. "Is Mommy really awake?" Lucy asked, her voice trembling with hope. Adam nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "She is, sweetheart. And she can't wait to see you both." As they neared the room, Adam knelt down to Lucy's level. "Remember, your mom is still recovering, so we need to be gentle, okay?" Lucy nodded solemnly, her eyes brimming with tears. Adam took a deep breath and opened the door. Mrs. Willow was propped up in bed, her face lighting up when she saw her children. "Lucy." "Oh, my babies," she cried, extending her arms. Lucy rushed forward, climbing onto the bed and throwing her arms around her mother. Mrs. Willow held her daughter close, tears streaming down her face as she stroked Lucy's hair. Adam approached slowly, cradling the baby. Mrs. Willow reached out, and Adam carefully placed the infant in her arms. She sobbed with joy, kissing her son's forehead and pulling both children close. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Willow whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry I left you alone." "It's okay, Mommy," Lucy said, her small hand wiping away her mother's tears. "We're together now." Adam stepped back, his own eyes misty as he watched the family reunite. He felt a wave of pride and relief, knowing he had played a part in bringing them back together. The love between them was palpable, filling the room with a warmth that touched his heart. As the family embraced, lost in their world of relief and joy, Adam quietly slipped out of the room. He leaned against the wall in the hallway, taking a moment to collect himself. The tough exterior he had worn for so long had crumbled, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and compassion. Adam found himself visiting Lucy and her family more often as Mrs. Willow recovered. He watched with pride as they slowly began to rebuild their lives together. Hospital visits turned into trips to a small apartment that Adam had helped them secure, far from the shadows of their past. One sunny afternoon, Adam knocked on the door of their new home, a box of groceries in his arms. Lucy's face lit up when she saw him. "Officer Adam," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around his waist. He chuckled, patting her head with his free hand. "Hey kiddo. How's everyone doing today?" Mrs. Willow appeared in the doorway, the baby bouncing in her arms. "Adam, you didn't have to bring us anything," she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. Adam shrugged, a warm smile on his face. "It's no trouble at all. I was in the neighborhood." As he stepped inside, Adam felt a sense of peace wash over him. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with second-hand furniture he had helped them find. Colorful drawings by Lucy adorned the walls, bringing life to the once empty space. As Mrs. Willow prepared some tea, Adam couldn't help but feel that he had found a second family in them. Adam sat on the floor with Lucy and her baby brother, who giggled as Adam made funny faces. Lucy leaned against his arm, proudly showing him her latest drawing. "It's us," she explained, pointing to the stick figures. "See, that's you, me, Mommy, and baby Tommy." Adam's heart swelled with emotion. "It's beautiful, Lucy," he said, his voice soft with affection. As he played with the children, he realized just how much his life had changed. The walls he had built around his heart were crumbling, replaced by a profound connection to this little family. He was no longer just the police officer who had found them. He had become a constant, protective presence in their lives. Sitting on the worn but cozy couch, sipping tea that Mrs. Willow had prepared, Adam watched as she gently cradled baby Tommy in her arms. Her eyes were filled with love and contentment. Lucy, sitting cross-legged on the floor, was coloring in a book Adam had brought her the previous week. Mrs. Willow looked at Adam, her eyes brimming with tears. "Officer Adam," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us." Adam felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't used to this kind of heartfelt gratitude. In the past he would have brushed it off, maintaining his professional distance, but now her words deeply touched him. "I was just doing my job," he murmured, though he knew that wasn't the truth. He had gone far beyond his duties as a police officer. Mrs. Willow shook her head, smiling through her tears. "No, Adam, you've been so much more than just an officer to us. You've been our guardian angel." Lucy looked up from her coloring book, nodding enthusiastically. "Yeah, you're like our superhero, Officer Adam," she said with a wide grin. A warmth spread through Adam's chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He gazed at the family in front of him, the mother he had found in the hospital, the brave little girl who had stolen his heart, and the baby boy who now laughed joyfully in his mother's arms. They had become more than just another case to him. For the first time in a long while, Adam felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The emotional barriers he had built over the years, seeing the worst in people, were beginning to crumble. This family had awakened a part of him that he thought had long been lost. "You don't need to thank me," Adam said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Seeing you all safe and happy, that's all the thanks I need." Officer Adam sat in his patrol car, parked outside the Willows' new apartment. He watched Lucy wave goodbye from the window, her smile bright and genuine. He waved back, feeling the familiar warmth in his chest that had been growing in recent weeks. His mind drifted back to the day he first saw Lucy standing outside that restaurant. He remembered the suspicion and weariness he felt, emotions that had become second nature after years on the force. Now those feelings seemed like relics of another life. Meeting Lucy and her family had changed him. The walls he had built around his heart, brick by brick over the years, had come tumbling down. In their place was a renewed sense of purpose and compassion. Adam realized he no longer saw the world through cynical eyes. Instead, he found himself noticing the silent struggles of families around him, the battles fought by those too afraid or too proud to ask for help. As he started his car, Adam made a decision. He would use his position as an officer to do more than just enforce the law. He would become an advocate for those in need, just as he had been for Lucy and her family. The next day, Adam approached his captain with an idea for a new community outreach program. He wanted to connect struggling families with local resources and support services. To his surprise, the captain was enthusiastic about the idea. In the weeks that followed, Adam threw himself into his new role. He visited schools, community centers, and local businesses, spreading the word about the program. He worked tirelessly to build a network of volunteers and social workers who could provide help where it was needed most. Each time he saw a family receive the support they desperately needed, Adam felt that same warmth in his chest. He thought of Lucy's brave smile, her mother's tearful gratitude, and baby Tommy's innocent laughter. They had shown him that even in the darkest moments, there was hope and kindness in the world. On a chilly morning, Officer Adam arrived at the Willows apartment building, a smile already forming on his face as he climbed the stairs. He could hear Lucy's excited chatter through the door. He knocked, and the door swung open almost immediately. "Officer Adam?" Lucy beamed, throwing her arms around him in a tight hug. "Hey kiddo," Adam laughed, patting her back. "How's everyone doing today?" Lucy's mother, Mrs. Willow, appeared in the doorway holding baby Tommy. "We're all great, Adam. Come in." As Adam stepped inside, he marveled at how the apartment had transformed. What was once a bare, unfamiliar space was now filled with warmth and life. Colorful drawings adorned the walls, and the smell of freshly baked cookies filled the air. "I made cookies," Lucy announced proudly. "Want to try one?" Adam nodded, his heart swelling with affection. "I'd love one, Lucy. Thank you." As he sat at the kitchen table, chewing on a slightly burnt but delicious cookie, Adam watched Lucy and Tommy playing on the living room floor. Mrs. Willow joined him with a cup of coffee in her hands. "You know, Adam," she said softly, "we can never thank you enough for all you've done for us. You've become such an important part of our lives." Adam felt that familiar lump in his throat again. He thought of the lonely nights in his empty apartment, the years he'd spent keeping everyone at arm's length. Now here he was, surrounded by laughter and love. "I think you've done more for me than I could ever do for you," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me what family really means." Mrs. Willow reached out and squeezed his hand. "You're family to us now, Adam. You know that, right?" Adam nodded, unable to speak. He watched as Lucy showed Tommy how to stack blocks, her patience and kindness reminding him of how much she had grown. The baby laughed as he knocked the tower over, and Lucy laughed along with him. In that moment, Adam realized his life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. The walls around his heart had crumbled, replaced by the warmth and love of this small family. He wasn't just Officer Adam anymore. He was Uncle Adam, a beloved part of the Willow family. As the sun shone brightly overhead, Officer Adam found himself sitting on a park bench, watching Lucy chase her little brother Tommy through the lush grass. The sound of their laughter filled the air, bringing a smile to his face. Mrs. Willow, Lucy's mother, sat beside him, her eyes shining with joy as she watched her children play. She looked healthier and more vibrant than the frail woman Adam had first seen in that hospital bed. "I never thought we'd have days like this again," Mrs. Willow said softly, turning to Adam with gratitude in her eyes. Adam nodded, his heart full. "I'm just glad I could be a part of it," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Lucy's excited shout caught their attention. "Mom, Officer Adam. Look at Tommy go," she cried as the little boy took wobbly steps toward a colorful butterfly. Adam laughed, remembering how far they had all come. He thought back to that fateful night when he first met Lucy, how he had misjudged her, and how that moment had changed everything. As Adam watched Lucy gently guide her brother, showing him how to approach the butterfly without scaring it away, a deep warmth spread through his chest. The family he had once seen as just another case had become so much more. Mrs. Willow reached out, grasping his hand. "You know, you're not just Officer Adam to us anymore, you're family." Adam felt a lump rise in his throat. Years of building emotional walls around his heart, convinced that distance was essential for his job, began to crumble. Surrounded by the love and laughter of the Willows, he realized how much he had been missing. Lucy dashed over to them, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Can we have ice cream?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Of course, sweetheart," Mrs. Willow replied, rising from her seat. "Adam, would you like to join us?" Adam nodded, rising to his feet as they walked towards the ice cream stand. Lucy slipped her small hand into his, and at that moment, Adam felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. He was no longer just a police officer doing his job, he was part of something larger, something beautiful. As the golden light of the setting sun painted the sky in warm hues, Officer Adam stood at the edge of the park, watching Lucy and Tommy swing joyfully. A deep sense of contentment enveloped him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. His mind drifted back to the night he first encountered Lucy outside that restaurant. He remembered the skepticism and exhaustion that clouded his judgment. Now, as he watched her laugh and play, he marveled at how much he had changed, not just for Lucy and her family but for himself as well. The hardened exterior he had built over the years had crumbled, revealing a compassionate heart that had always been buried under layers of cynicism and caution. Meeting Lucy had reignited something within him, a sense of purpose he thought he had lost long ago. As he walked towards the playground, his steps felt lighter. He saw the world differently now, with open eyes to the struggles and triumphs of those around him. His badge no longer felt like a shield, but a symbol of the difference he could make in people's lives. Suddenly Lucy spotted him. Her face lit up with a brilliant smile as she jumped from the swing and raced towards him. "Officer Adam," she shouted with joyful exuberance. Before he could react, Lucy wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug. "You're my guardian angel," she said, looking up at him with eyes full of trust and affection. Adam felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed by the impact he had had on this little girl's life. He knelt down to her level, his voice soft as he spoke, "And you, Lucy, have been my guardian angel too." As the day came to an end and he prepared to leave, Adam felt a profound sense of transformation within himself. Driving away from the park, he knew his life would never be the same. The hardened officer who had entered that abandoned building months ago had been replaced by a man with a renewed heart and a rekindled sense of purpose. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment below, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. See you in the next video.